Good afternoon, happy Saturday, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here, and we are here with Savage Saturday Comic Review, episode 74. And today we bring you an offbeat, a little off-kilter story from Bruce Jones in Savage Sword of Conan, issue number 70. Part horror with some humor thrown in there, and a lot of action with a very askew story. And you'll see what I mean as we get into this. Alright, first of all, incredible cover by one of my favorite fantasy painters and artists of illustrators of all time. Right, that's Earl Norem. Absolutely gorgeous. But we will get into this and we will show you the frontispiece by Gil Kane. Alright, so we have a story by someone who is one of my favorite writers, although I would say this is a medium effort for him. And but this is by Bruce Jones with art by John Buscema and Steve Mitchell. Now, John Buscema's art, as you know, is some of my favorite. I don't think that Steve Mitchell is necessarily the right inker for him. Sometimes the inks in this I've found a little weak. It's certainly not like Ernie Chan or Alfredo Alcala or even Tony DeZanuga if they ink him, right? Those guys just bring out the very best in John's pencils. This is certainly good art. I just thought the inks lacked some definition where they could have added some depth to the panels and the characters. But having said that, let's get into the story and see where it leads us. So we have a very weary barbarian, Conan, who is making his way into this little town. And the town's called Meshkin. And he's just bone tired. He's been on his horse. He's been going for days. He needs a place to eat, drink. And he's riding into this town, and he says, deserted. Where in the name of Ishtar is everyone? Because it's odd. There's no life going on. The streets are empty. And this one's called The Dweller in the Depths. So you can see him entering this town. It's very ghost-like. Nobody's there. And he's left to wonder what's going on. Wonder, not wander, wonder. Woo, doing good with words already. So he gets in, he's surveying the situation, he goes into a bar, no one's there, not even at a tavern, not even the drinkers, and he goes in, pours himself a glass, leaves a coin behind so he's not stealing, and quaffs his cup of ale to quench his thirst. But upon exiting the bar, he runs into a group of women who start stoning him and accusing him of being a demon that has made off with all of their men. Now he's just an easy target. They don't know where their men are. There's somebody to blame that finally showed up in town. And as they're stoning him, another woman intercedes. And her name is Zapha, I believe. Of course, I'm forgetting it right away. I'm sorry, Fala. Her name is Fala. So the women are stoning him. She shows up. Asks Conan who he is. He says, I'm Conan, a Sumerian. I'm no demon. And she goes to whip him to find out. He grabs a whip and pulls her off, tells her, next time you go to whip someone, don't play your hand by going high, you whip low, and he gives her a quick little lesson and unseats her. And then picks her up, drops her, and then plants a kiss on her to add insult to injury and asking her if that's flesh enough for her. And then, unceremoniously, he drops her. And he takes off out of town saying, you guys are ungrateful. Next time, think about what you're doing before you, accost somebody. So he leaves town, and all of a sudden his horse gets felled as he's relaxing. And he gets basically whipped off his horse. So she whipped him again. She's like, by heaven, you're right, barbarian. It does work better when you strike low. And now Conan's just mad. He's like, follow, by the gods, man or woman, no one unseats Conan of Samaria and lives to tell of it. And while Conan was riding away, he's like, there's two. She has a fine pair of, and he never finished the sentence before he got whipped. And she's like, a fine pair of what, friend Conan? And she lashes out, catches him by the feet, and puts him on his rump again. And Conan's just getting furious. And he's already threatening her. He goes, when I rid myself of this bothersome knot, young lady, I'll give you something you can really laugh about. And she's like, yes, well, quit yanking at it. You're going to ruin the knot. She says, here, let me do it. And she's been kind of flirting, Hyborian age flirting, right? A little roughing each other up first. And then she gets him back and plants a kiss on him, which he's not minding so much, right? So our story's moving along swiftly. And Conan's like, if that was an attempt to assuage my temper, it worked, right? She's like, good, now maybe you'll accept my invitation. You know, they've had some misunderstandings. Come back to the house, break bread with me, and I'll tell you everything that's going on. So he makes his way back to her place, and she tells him about this weird singing that was coming into town. And when the men hear the singing, they're led away, and they don't come back. And one of those men that got led away was her father. And she hires Conan to help her find out what is going on. Where are the men? Why is their town abandoned? Conan, needing the money, agrees. And he doesn't mind the company of Fala. He's quite taken with her. So the first place she says that they need to go is to a Vulcan castle that rests on a low mountain near them. And she's like, we began by asking the king of this province what he knows of this business. He's like, oh, King Valken, I've heard of him. Reputably, a very wealthy man. And she's like, yes, in the morning we'll go. For now, we go to bed. He goes, I warn you, I haven't been with a woman in weeks. And her, still being playful, says, then what are you doing way over there? So we had the exchange, we had the meeting. We had them still flirting with each other. And then they passed the night together to wake up in the morning and set off for Vulcan Castle and to see if they can uncover some of the clues as to what's going on and why the men are disappearing. Once they get there, the castle looms large, and they make their way inside. There's very few guardsmen on duty, which Conan takes notice of, and they lead them to the king. And the king is here, and he's kind of in a foul mood. He's like, he doesn't have a lot of people, and he says all his treasures being taken, and he leads him to the treasure room to show him that he's about to be destitute. But when he opens the treasure room, Quinn's like, wow, there's still plenty there to roll from. He goes, it used to be piled towards the ceiling. And then he finds out who the girl's father is, and she asks him, you know, I forgot his name. Oh, my name is Follow Leroux, she says. You are the daughter of that libertine Leroux? And so her father doesn't have a good name there, and he orders them captured on sight, and he wants to kill them. So the battle ensues, and then we get into a bit of humor. Conan's fighting the people that are chasing him, and he's asking her which way to the exit. She's like, this way. No, this way. He's like, make up your mind. It's kind of like a little comedy of errors, almost like an Abbott and Costello trying to make their way out of a castle. And it's a little more humor that's in a Conan story usually, but it's still funny, and it's a little bit of a breath of fresh air. And as he's fighting his way through the guards and making their way, she's still trying to decide which way they need to go. Conan finally has had enough of it, and they're atop the castle, and he just grabs her and jumps the wall into the river below and takes her with him. And she's still trying to figure out, even within the water, he's like, yes, I'm positive that's it. He's like, good. Shall we run back and check it out? Just egging her on, you know, because Conan's already escaped. Now, they're being shot at with arrows, and Conan and her make their escape, and they do a bit of hunting, and by the night, they're just resting, and they're having a little bit of food to eat. But when they wake up the next morning, they can hear that chirping, that singing. And what happens is they see this tall tower across from the lake. And that is where the chirping is coming from. So they go over to investigate it. As they're on their way over, though, they see um, they see a deer, a stag, and the stag is having some problems. And Conan sees that it's covered with ants. But no sooner is the stag covered with ants than Fala is covered with ants. Conan, thinking quickly, tackles her into the water, and the ants, of course, can't swim, and thus saves her life. And you see that the ants, in a very short time, ate the stag and just decimated it. So Conan just saved her from a quick, brutal death. And but as they're there, when they come back out, Conan spies this line of undead people carrying huge sacks, and he has no idea what they are. And he has no idea how the undead are walking. But Conan wants answers. And as they're making their way past Conan, he waits till there's one left, and he knocks the guy down to investigate, which seems to be a mistake, because you can see on this page here, when he knocks him down at the bottom, and the guy gets up, Conan throws him against a rock, and Conan's like, that should have broke his spine. He shouldn't have been able to get up from that. But the guy is animated. He's dead. He's not feeling any pains, any broken bones, and he's still attacking Conan. And Conan's finding himself in a little bit of trouble. Alright, so the guy is still attacking Conan, and then finally gets his teeth into Conan's shoulder. Conan grabs the guy's head, pulls up, and then separates the head, which pulls apart surprisingly easy from the body, and it collapses. And to his horror and her horror, a bunch of ants crawl out of the body. The ants were actually animating the body from the inside. And the mystery's getting really thick in here. And that's like the cool little horror part of this story, right? You had the animated dead full of ants animating the bodies. And she's horrified. Conan just got his interest piqued because now he really wants to know what's going on. But more than that, he wants his payday. And he can't get his payday until he helps her find her father. So Conan's all about pushing forward. So they enter the tower. And while they're in there and they're running around, a hand shoots out and grabs her. Conan separates the hand from the arm, which came out of the dirt, and then Conan is grabbed from behind. Conan, thinking quickly, I'll leave that up there a second so you guys can get a good look at what's going on. But Conan, thinking quickly, uses his natural strength and power and flips the creature out of the shadows. And when it stands up, he sees it's a human body with an ant's head, and it's the size of a regular person. And then Conan's got to do battle with the beast. He destroys it pretty quickly and beheads it, and they make their way deeper into the cavern. And once they get there, you know, the sacks that those guys are carrying are filled with sugar. And Conan wants to see what they're doing with this sugar and why there's so many sacks. And it's a horrific thing that they see, because there's a huge queen that has the top of a woman, and she is just laying eggs as she's being fed, and she's being fed non-stop. And you see the ant people grabbing the eggs and taking them away. And then they Fala spots her father when they see some ant people trying to force feed a guy that's tied to a stake. And that's when Conan sees his payday, right? Because now he can free him. Conan runs over and dispatches of those ant people, and finally sees her father. But her father's got a story to tell, and it's not a fun one. So he talks about how that queen that is laying all the eggs is actually Fala's mother, and she was human before. She's not quite human now, and it has to do with the stuff they were feeding her. But how she came that way is she was always unhappy. She always wanted sons, and she wanted to command an army. She always wanted power. And when she was with Fala's father, and they had a daughter, she was furious, and she left, and she took off. And she went to the castle, and I already forgot the dude's name, because that's how I am. So her name was Mira, and she promised the magician in the castle a high station. But she ended up laying with the king, and he was so smitten with her that he executed his queen to be with her. But King Vulcan, he couldn't give her any sons, and she didn't see her destiny with him. And so she took off from him as well. So you got her in a couple pages, not only leaving Fala's father, but also manipulating her way into this king, King Veldin, killing the queen, or Velkin killing the queen to make her queen and be with him. And then when he can't give her what she wants, she even takes off from him. Her quest is for power, and she cares for nothing else. She wants an army to lead, and she wants to take over. But she's consigned herself to her fate. She wasn't allowed to leave. She's in the castle. Then one day, Fala's father makes his way back in the castle, and she sees him, and old memories are rekindled, and her and Mira and Fala's father sleep together again and are caught by the king. And the king exiles them and is leading them out to get executed. He knows about the giant. He knows about the ants and how they feed. And he goes and puts them up on poles. But the weirdest thing happens. It's like she can talk to the ants. And the ants' queen just currently died. And they have this void to fill. She knows this and gives herself to them as their queen. They feed her this weird food, which starts to transform her into this thing. She becomes a thing of horror. And they're feeding the father constantly these little pellets of food. And he's being forced to mate with her and keep making more like ant people hybrids. And the first one was called Doc, but no one's seen them. And all you do is hear of them. And then he's talking about how he's tried to get away and it just never works. And Conan is vowing to free him. And like I said, Conan wants his payday. So Conan has not given up on anything. Paul is saying, we just need to go. So as they're making their way out, the queen spots them and sends her ant people after them. And Conan's got to think quick. He has Fala helping her her father out, and he is spotting that they are under the river. He's feeling drops of water. So as they're making their way out, Conan starts disturbing the ceiling and creates a hole which ushers in the water and starts drowning all the ant people and the queen as they're making their escape. So you got some great panels with that. And they make their way outside, and they're finally free. But the water's building up. It's surrounding and then overtaking the tiny island that was there with the tower. But the pressure's building up underneath and shoots up the tower and breaks it away. And then you find out what was going on with all the jewels and treasure that the ant people were stealing from the king. And they were using all that, putting it together to build a monument to Mira in her human form, who is now their queen. The monument she always wanted, built in her honor as she leads people to conquest. Conan sees that and goes, oh, if I can just pry a couple pieces of the treasure off that, I'll be set. And he makes his way over there. So Fala's trying to stop him. She's worried for his life. She's like, it's going to burst. It's going to collapse. You need to get away. He's got too much treasure on his mind. She's staying behind with her father, and Conan approaches. And then there's a big disrupting, and something from the bottom is coming up. And it is Thok, the first son. And he's like this big furry ant, almost spider looking. Pretty fearsome. 20 shoulders high to Conan. And lengths higher than Conan. And Conan's left fighting him. Conan barely survives getting caught in its jaws by a stone that gets picked up with it. And Conan's blade is having no effect. He finally, while he's in the jaws, is able to stab into one of the eyes and is released. And then the pressure builds up and blows away the clay base that is holding the the treasure statue up, and it collapses on top of the head of Thok and murders the giant creature, allowing Conan his escape. Conan comes up from the water. He's safe, and him and Fala and her father are free to make their way back to the village. And that is our tale. So, fun little tale. Very horror based on this one, with some well-timed levity to break it. Even though it's one of the more observed tales, not one of the ones you would mainly think of when you think Conan. A fun tale nonetheless, but the type of story you want to see a minimum of. You don't want to see, these are good for a break once in a while, but you don't want to see almost sometimes a slapstick humor in Conan. And a few of the lines, as good a writer as Bruce Jones didn't ring true in this. Overall, I'll give this story a B. The art by John Buscema, I will give a B+. And the inks, which I thought were very weak in this issue, we're going to give a C. You got a great penciler like John Buscema, and you're kind of making his art look like rough sketches instead of finished product. And you really needed a stronger inker to complement John Buscema's pencils. So overall, we'll give this issue a B, a B+. It's fun. It's will fit your mood if you're in the mood for a good like B monster tale, right? Like if you're gonna watch somebody in a rubber suit movie be the monster. This was fun for that. A little bit of escapism, a little bit of fun. Not 100% Conan in my opinion, but also about 85% Conan. So it was still good. Just the humor was a little off here and there, even though it was fun to get something a bit different. Still a story that works out quite well, just not a perfect story. But that's it for this week, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Saturday Comic Review. And until next time, keep it casual.